Good afternoon, Monique from New Jersey. Welcome, everyone. Day 2 of NPP for Implementers training. We had such a good session and a great time getting to know you all on day 1. Today looks a little bit different. It's a little bit more NPP process oriented. We want to make sure y'all really comfortable with the actual process of the pantry program, all the resources that go along with it, the tools that you use, how you get this program kicked off successfully, get people excited about it. So that's the topic of today. Of course, we want to thank our fiscal sponsors for this training, CalFresh Healthy Living. Just a couple of housekeeping items, pretty standard stuff. We are recording that so that you can review this recording later. And we know we have a few people who are unable to make today's session, mostly because they're working harder and more than they ever have, or they have in a really, really long time. So I just want to acknowledge that this is a very challenging, difficult time to work in the food distribution setting, in a food pantry, supporting these types of services. So I really appreciate everyone who's showing up here today. If you need to step away, if you have some sort of emergency that crops up, don't worry, the recording is there for you. And I'm just so impressed by this group of people who always mobilizes when the need is there. It's incredible. So thank you all. Okay, rename yourself to preferred names, pronouns, etc. However you want to be referred to, because all we can see is what you tell us your name is on Zoom. And if you don't have to show your video throughout the day. It is really nice to see you at least a little bit if you want to pop on and off, but definitely when you go into a breakout room, I think we have at least one breakout session today. It's really nice to turn videos on for that if you're able to. If you don't have access to a camera or sound, no worries. You can still join a breakout and use the chat feature, or you can go ahead and reach out to Amy. She's our tech support today, and she'll be able to make sure you either stay with us or get in the right breakout room. Okay, so as I mentioned, things are stressful. And so I like to do a little soup bowl breathing. I thought this would be a good opener because it's a nice little regulation moment. So maybe this is new to you. Maybe some of you have taken a prior Leah's Pantry training and you are familiar with it. Either way, kind of get yourself situated in your chair. It's all about, take a moment. Are you sitting up straight? We all have that computer schlump that we get throughout the day, right? So it's kind of like shoulders back like a stack of pennies. Cup your hands in front of you. Close your eyes or just lower them. I usually just kind of look down at my hands. Imagine you're holding a warm bowl of soup. So you can kind of like feel the weight of the bowl in your hands, feel the warmth spreading throughout your fingers. And then this is just a breathing exercise. So it's just imagine you're breathing in through your nose, the smell of that soup, out through your mouth, gently cooling it. Let's just do that 2 more times. So just in, slow breath, out, cooling your soup. 1 more time, in and out. All right, hopefully that helped us all feel a little bit more settled in the room for today. We have a packed agenda, like I shared. We're going to go over a very brief overview of the program, defining your role as an implementer. We know that there are different types of implementers in this room. So there are some of you who are at a site where you are the pantry. So you're like, I'm just going to take this to my own organization or my own colleagues and volunteers. Some of you are working with funding where you are supporting pantries. So keep that in mind. We're going to kind of be talking to both groups today, whether you're working at your site where you're going to do NPP, or maybe you have to partner with a site in order to take this program to the community. So because of that, we'll talk about recruiting, but we'll really talk about building buy-in and excitement, which is applicable no matter which group you're in. We'll give you some tips and tricks for getting started with your first pantry. We will go into one of our focus areas, which is feedback. Show a very quick Basecamp 101. That's our project management tool that you'll all be added to, and then we'll close out. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Colby to get us started.
All right, so we're going to kick it right off and talk about your role as an implementer. As Leah just said, we have people coming from a few different kind of backgrounds, and maybe using this program in slightly different ways. So when we talk about this implementer role, I'm going to do my best to kind of parse those two roles apart. The main difference here is that some of y'all are going to be reaching out to outside organizations and outside pantries and implementing as kind of like an outsider who's supporting this pantry. The other role is you're going to actually be in the pantry. It's your pantry. You don't have to worry about recruiting so much. So some of these things might feel really applicable, some things a little bit less so, and that's okay. So, the first and foremost thing about this program and your role as an implementer is that you're really a guide. Now, this is really applicable if you're working with an outside pantry because you know this program best, but they know their pantry best. So, if you are in the pantry and you are implementing this program, you're kind of the guide and expert all in one. But if you are working maybe at a food bank implementing with one of your network pantries or just finding any other pantry outside of one that you would be working in yourself, you are really going to be the guide in this program, and the pantry is going to be the expert in their pantry, which means that you're going to be very much in collaboration together. So you are going to be bringing a lot of implementing resources, a lot of information about this program, but the pantry is going to be needing to bring their information about the pantry. So you're going to meet in the middle there and combine forces, combine resources. Now, if you are working in your own pantry to implement this program, you might want to recruit a team of staff or a team of volunteers and get them to collaborate with you for implementing this program and kind of breaking up the work of the implementation in your own site. You're also going to be a connector. Now, I think that this is important regardless of whether it's an outside organization that you're implementing with or it's your own organization. But a big part of the Nutrition Pantry program is connecting pantries to resources and connecting pantries to other partners in the community. So if you are implementing your own program, you're going to be bringing tons of resources from this training and connecting your pantry with that. If you're working with an outside pantry, you're again going to be connecting that pantry with tons of resources. And hopefully throughout that, you're able to connect the pantry with other partners in the community. Regardless, being a good listener is a really important role in implementing this. Now, if you're working with an outside pantry, understanding where the pantry is at with overwhelm, asking lots of questions, really trying to figure out as much as you can what this pantry wants, what this pantry needs, and what this pantry is able to do. If you are working within your own pantry, you're still going to want to take some time to listen and get feedback from staff and volunteers and neighbors. Throughout this entire process, change can be scary, so listening is always going to be important. And finally, you're going to be a sustainability advocate. Well, this might sound like you're referring to implementing environmentally friendly processes, which is definitely part of the program whenever possible. What we're really referring to, actually, though, is the sustainability of this program after you may not be able to implement it anymore. So, if you're working with an outside organization, once that organization and that pantry graduates, you're not going to be working with them so much. You'll check in, but you're not going to be in that really hands-on role. So you want to make sure that the processes and changes that you implemented while you were working together are still sustainable after you leave. If you are the lead of the pantry and the implementer, think about how these practices could be continued by other people in the organization, especially if you might be looking to retire soon or move on, or if you're in a volunteer capacity. We know there's a lot of turnover in pantries. So how can new people coming in either at a leadership level or a lower level be able to engage with the changes that you've made and make sure they continue long into the future? One document that I want to point out that's especially helpful if you are working with an outside organization to really lay expectations in the beginning is this NPP Partnership Overview and Agreement. You can see it here on the screen, and I have it real quick here to show y'all. It outlines different commitments and different roles and responsibilities, and at the bottom, there's an opportunity for all parties to sign. This program can feel like a lot and it can feel overwhelming. So when you are really setting this program up as the implementer, it's really important to level set what the expectations are and make sure everyone feels good about that and has good buy-in. Which takes me to my next section about pantry recruitment and buy-in. Now, consideration of recruiting a pantry and getting buy-in falls into the planning phase. So we're still in this first sign on this road. It's important to make sure that a pantry is fully on board, whether it's your own pantry or a pantry that you are working with outside of your organization. And so there's a few things we want to consider. We've heard from other people, other implementers, whether in this training or after, that they can barely get pantries, outside agencies to, return the required paperwork. How are they going to get them to sign up for a new program? And that is super valid, especially in this time where, as Leah pointed out, pantries are really, really at their capacity because of such high need. So we really suggest starting with low-hanging fruit. And what this means is a couple of things. First, start with the pantries that are ready and able, the pantries that have the person power, that have the time, that are really like ready to level up their operations. If you have pantries that have a hard time returning that paperwork, you have a hard time getting in touch with them, they're not showing up to meetings, that's probably not a pantry that you want to start with. So start with some more resourced pantries. And then also start with easy action items, right? It's just a great way to ease pantries into the program. Show how easy it can be to, hey, we can make an action item to put out recipe cards, and I can go print recipe cards from eatfresh.org for you. And boom, all you have to do is put them on a table and we just check that off. That was so easy. What can we do next? If you're working with your own pantry, starting with those easy items is also a really good idea because it eases other staff and volunteers into the process in a pretty easy way. Now, think about if there are other networks or pantry networks that you can tap into, right? So this applies mostly to those of you who are going to be implementing outside of your own organization. But think about where you can find pantries. Recruitment can be a challenge. Getting pantries on board can be a challenge sometimes. So think about what connections you already have. If you're coming from a food bank, you probably have a big network of partner pantries that you can tap into. We've also heard other implementers talk about finding pantry councils or coalitions in the past. And that's a great opportunity to find a lot of potential pantries to work with in one place. And a great idea in that case would be to pitch an NPP intro session. So thinking about how can I cast a wide net that makes this really time effective of getting pantries onboarded for both myself and those pantries, right? Having to do individual intro sessions can get a little tiring, although it is important if you are really reaching out one-on-one to pantries. But if you've connected with a network or a coalition of pantries, excuse me, then consider joining one of those coalition meetings and pitching NPP to all the pantries all at once. That just cast your net super wide and saved you a bunch of time. And as you probably learned and talked about or got exposed to in our online course, you could then even do like a calendar model of rolling out pantry work together. So you have a cohort that's going through it together. So there's lots of different opportunities and upsides of reaching out and getting multiple pantries onboarded at once. Also, think about what kind of incentives you can offer pantries. Incentives are a really, really good option, right? Like, although we're offering this pantry our time and our expertise of the program for free, that's a great incentive in itself. But especially consider if there's opportunities to connect pantries to funding, maybe through their local food bank, or if they can get extra deliveries or extra food or extra resources from a local food bank. Also think about if you can help them find grant or other funding outside funding opportunities. I've never met a pantry that says, "Nope, we have enough money, we don't need more," right? Like, especially in this day and age where need is really, really growing, any opportunities where the pantry can do a better job of meeting the need of their community is going to make them feel like this is really a good opportunity for them. And then think about what makes a good pantry recruit. This ties back to kind of the low-hanging fruit, but we really want to be upfront about how much time this is going to take. Walk them through what the steps of the program are. Go through that NPP overview and agreement with them. And so if you are reaching out to an outside pantry, you want to be really upfront about what's going to be expected. But again, if you are doing this within your own pantry, get the volunteers on board, get other staff on board, ensure that people feel confident and excited for this program, as opposed to it something that is this extra task, extra work for them. Help them see the benefits of how this is actually going to make their job easier and help them support their community better. Now, there are some specific points that you might want to emphasize when you're sharing information about this program with a potential new pantry or within your own organization as you're rolling out the program. The first thing that I really want to emphasize, and you'll want to emphasize with your pantry, is that the schedule is flexible. This is true for implementers on your end and for the pantries on your end. So, as I mentioned, there's a variety of ways that you can implement this program. You can do the cohort model, right? Also known as the calendar model that you were introduced to in your online course that I mentioned on the previous slide. You could also do group trainings, right? Like the wave model to make this easier. We've seen an increasing interest in cohort models with some of our food bankers because they already have a network of pantries. And so by rolling this out in a cohort model, it helps them be more efficient with their time. And then pantries also get to talk to and collaborate with each other. Remember that this program is super customizable, right? So we say if you've seen one pantry, you've seen one pantry. Whether you're implementing at an outside organization or you're working within your organization, what each pantry has capacity for and ability to do is going to be different. So we're only comparing the pantry against itself. What looks like gold for one pantry that has a lot of person power and a lot of funding and a lot of support, what they can do to reach gold is going to be super different than a small, more, closet or church basement size volunteer run pantry. But everyone can reach gold because it simply is based on what the pantry has the capacity to do and how much they are able to do based on that capacity. So also remember that the pantry can choose how much they want to do, right? Especially if, there's a lot going on, but a pantry still wants to make improvements. They can start with bronze. Bronze is only changes in one or two focus areas. Maybe they just want to work on their policies and procedures, or they just want to increase their the physical environment of their pantry. They can still get certified as bronze, and that is still a really good highlight to share with potential funders, to share when applying with grants. So remember that we can start slow and then always recertify at silver and then always recertify at gold. There is no expectation that everyone has to do gold. And starting slow is often a great way to ease a pantry into this. There's no set requirements for participation as long as a pantry is willing to show up and do the work. So there's no, additional funding or like requirements or hoops that a pantry has to jump through, as long as they do as much work as they can do and are comfortable with. As an implementer, you do have to fill out some paperwork, the work plan, the pre and post assessments, and that is required for the pantry, but that is more so on you as the implementer. If you are working with an outside organization, you'll be more focused on doing the paperwork aspect, and the pantry is probably going to be heavily focused on doing the changes. If you are implementing within your own pantry, maybe you want to take on more of that paperwork aspect and support or guide the other staff and volunteers in making those changes. Now, finally, there's a lot of off-the-shelf resources that can be used and implemented, changes that can be made and celebrated with little time and little money. I'm going to show you the resource library here in just a moment, but we have so many templates. We have signs that can just be printed and put up. There's always recipe cards you can order off of eatfresh.org that is really so easy to use and can really highlight and elevate what a pantry can do. So speaking of resources, I want to now take you through our resource library real quick. I'm going to show you the one pager and brochure that's really helpful when pitching this to a pantry, the certification overview, that MOU, that agreement that I pointed out, and eatfresh.org. So this is our resource library. There's a lot to do here. We have, um, I think 5 pages, and there's lots of resources. So one thing that I want to point out off the bat is the Command F function. On Windows, I think it's like Control F, and it comes up and you can search for, let's say I want to look for that MOU, right? That helps me find it right here. We have our MOU. We also have our one pager. This is a really good one to use when implement or sharing information about the program. We have a certification overview, and we have that partnership overview. All of these can be found right here in the program overview section. Hopefully that makes sense. Another great option is the eatfresh.org website. There's tons of recipes on here. You can filter by recipes, meal plans, etc. And I think Leah is going to get into this in a little more detail later. So I'll leave that for her.
Awesome. Well,
Oops,
again, thank
I got excited there. There we go. Um, so one thing I do want to share real quick, there we go, before this gets going. On this topic of resources and recruiting and getting pantry buy-in, we have a really incredible implementer from CAPK, which is the Community Action Partnership of Kern County, Ashley McAllister, and she spoke at one of our recent NPP network meetings about a pantry that she worked with, and she's a really seasoned implementer, so I think it was really helpful for other implementers to hear what she did to get this pantry on board. So this video is going to be about 12 minutes. Sit back, relax, and take notes of anything that you think might be helpful for your pantry to implement or your organization to use when recruiting pantries as well.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you so
Sound?
much for bearing with
Can you hear
me.
it
And
yet?
my name is Ashley McAllister. I am with a Community Action Partnership of Kern County, as you already heard, as known as CAPK, Cal Fresh Healthy Living. I am a community health specialist. Next slide. So today I'm going to be speaking about the Kern County Food Pantry Collaborative. We're going to be going over what the Food Pantry Collaborative actually consists of and what role this collaborative has in helping us recruit for MPP. I'll also go over the one that we just had in February. Next slide. So what is the Kern County Food Pantry Collaborative? The collaborative started in January 2023, and we do this collaborative on a triannual basis. We send out a few emails leading up to the date of the collaborative, and we keep track of our partners through a mass email list. We wanted to see, and we kind of saw that Kern County needed a little bit more of togetherness for the pantries and distribution. So we wanted a space where pantries and pantries and distributions could ask questions and get some answers to questions all in one place. And there was multiple questions about funding, grants, organizations, events, among other questions. So if we thought if most of our pantries had these questions, then maybe some of the more established pantries and distributions can share their knowledge and expertise. So it definitely started off with true collaboration and education and resources being exchanged. And along with those exchanges, we have guest speakers at each collaborative just to give a little bit more insight of their location. And then we also have some of the great connection with the CAPK Food Bank. And because the CAPK Food Bank is the only food bank in Kern County, almost every pantry mainly works with them. And speaking of the CAPK Food Bank, we're also going to their event tomorrow, which is the Agency Partner Conference. So this is where most of the pantries in Kern County, most of the distributions in Kern County will be at. And eventually, what we're hoping is that the food bank will actually take over this collaborative, just due to their consistency with communication with the pantries in Kern County. And this just goes to show you that a platform like this, where there could be open conversations and dialogue, can truly go a long way with networking and learning more about the needs of the county and your neighbors that you work with every day. Next slide. So to transition, this is actually the start of the presentation that me and my colleague Stephanie Cornell and I presented in February. So we started introducing ourselves and welcoming everyone to the first Kern County Food Pantry Collaborative of 2025. Next slide, please. And then we just got into the agenda for the collaborative. Next slide. And then also, we couldn't forget the icebreaker and the quick check in with ourselves before starting off with the information. Thank you. Our mission, food pantries in Kern County to come together and to serve the people in the community by connecting them with trusted resources to overcome and prevent food insecurity, making healthier choices, and provide help in the time of need. And our goal statement, next slide. Our purpose is to give people in the community an opportunity to be understood, respected, and treated with dignity when providing them with access to food, was actually created by, next slide, all of these collaborators that were actually some of the first connections in the collaborative way back when in January 2023. Next slide. So then we actually got into the NPP presentation. And we're just going to go over this a little bit quickly. So, we wanted to highlight the benefits of the adaptations that each pantry can do, excuse me, so that they can truly see themselves working through the program with their specific pantry and distribution and their specific needs and goals. Next slide. And then we briefly went into the process and what it may look like for them. Next slide. And then we highlighted the importance of the neighbor in this slide and how we wanted the neighbors that we service every day to feel nourished, seen, heard, and feel like they matter. Next slide. And in this focus area, or then we got into the focus areas by showing some photos of our current pantry partners in practice. So some of these photos are from a local college education class, and some of the other photos are actually from an elementary school where parents were able to learn about waste reduction efforts. Next slide. So in this focus area, we actually highlighted the organization and signage and what it may look like in a fully operational pantry. Next slide. For this specific slide, we actually highlighted the importance of being culturally competent and knowing your neighbors and clients that you work with every day. Some of these photos that you see are some of the resources and, of course, more signage. My favorite, or one of the favorites here in Kern County, is Flavors of My Kitchen, and it's a huge hit with most of our partners here in Kern County. Next slide. And this is probably one of my favorite slides. We highlighted the connection between multiple programs to get school supplies for a back to school event in fall of 2024 for one of our pantry partners. And they actually had a huge turnout and it was great. They actually were able to provide most of the students with haircuts as well. So this was a great event. Next slide. In this slide, another one of my favorites, one of our partners actually have chickens and they do composting on site. So this was a huge showcase for this specific focus area of what a site could potentially do. Now, this last focus area is a little bit daunting, but we highlighted that documentation helps keep the pantry and distribution running just smoothly and safely. We also highlighted that there are plenty of templates and resources that we can use to help their pantry get some of these processes going. And of course, we want to help them help their neighbors, and in turn, it helps us keep doing the work that we do. Next slide. And then, of course, we showcase some of our current pantry partners here. Next slide. And then following, we had our guest speaker for this collaborative. This is Anthony Beckman, and he actually works with the Vineland School District and works within the pantry. Next slide. He shared some details about this pantry in this slide. Next slide. And then he shared some partnerships for the pantry and highlighted the need to continue their amazing work in their specific location. Next slide. And then, of course, he highlighted some signage and A-frames provided by our team and why it's so important for this specific pantry. So their pantry is actually kind of hidden, so they needed these A-frames out on the side of the road, and they needed them large so they could actually showcase the pantry and let people know that they were actually there because they were kind of hidden. They also highlighted a huge collaboration with Brighter Bites, and he really went into detail about how Brighter Bites have been helping Vineland with the next slide. Brighter Bites was a huge implementer at their location. And then the next slide, I didn't add all of his slides due to timing purposes, but during one of these last slides, he actually spoke about the outreach that they're doing, and it specifically makes their pantry just really amazing and truly an advocate for their community. So they had many questions waiting for them after the presentation, all throughout Kern County. So next slide. So, following our guest speaker, we actually spoke about some grant opportunities and resources. Researching is definitely needed to gain access to grants and resources for your specific county and state. So, we highly recommend researching. And then training opportunities, we actually did some training opportunities within our program and then with Leah's Pantry trainings as well. And then we had about 10 minutes allotted to open the floor to our participants to speak about any announcements, events, or reminders. And then, of course, we used one of my favorite tools, Mentimeter. So we really like using Mentimeter in most of our program implementation processes because participants are able to ask questions or answer questions completely anonymously. And just sometimes these more in-depth questions or these more in-depth answers may not want to be spoken about verbally, and then even some participants just don't want to open up in an open discussion. So this is a great tool for us here in Kern County. Next slide. And then we had a partner survey and a community needs assessment survey. Next slide. And then these were just specifically for our programs here at CAPK, and we usually do these on a yearly basis. Next slide. And then we ended our presentation with a huge thank you and an open floor for any additional questions or comments. And we also added our QR code for our program. So if you hover your smartphone over this QR code with your camera open and ready, like you're about to take a picture, a link should automatically pop up. And if you just click it really quick, it should take you to all of our resources.
Alrighty, I'm going to pause it there. Ashley shared a lot of information in that, and this recording will be available, or this whole recording of today's session, including that video, will be available in your online course. So if you want to go back and review any of that, please don't hesitate to. But I think that she did a really great job of talking about the importance of that coalition, and that was something that they found really beneficial to pantry recruitment. So we're going to move on here to a few tips and tricks for getting started with your first pantry. And we've heard that sometimes the soft skills can be one of the hardest parts. Like I have these resources, I have this like kind of checklist that I'm supposed to go through, but what is it about interfacing with a pantry that does or doesn't get them excited? Um, so we're going to talk through, yes, some of those hard skills like the work plan, but then also some ways to kind of, soften up the pitch here that so it seems a little less scary for the pantry when you're pitching it. Now we're going to jump actually right into the work plan because this is a big one that can feel overwhelming for everybody. So the work plan is where you're going to document all of the changes that you've made with your pantry. And this can be found in our resource library. I'm going to use my Command F function again, and we're going to look for work plan. we have what first comes up are some examples. So this might be a really good place to start to see what a completed work plan looks like. And then it's going to be time to draft your own work plan. And it is located under needs assessment and work plan. We'll open up this one. The work plan is pretty big. I think it's like 13 pages. I want to 14 pages. And it's broken down into different sections. So really get familiar with this work plan before you pitch it to the pantry because they're going to see this and be like, oh my gosh, this is way more than we can ever do. But remember that you only have to do as much as you want to do. So that's a really, really important part of the work plan. There we go. We want to locate it, review it in its entirety, check out those other examples in there. And then remember that at this point, the work plan comes if we think about that roadmap, right? We had the planning, then we do the assessment, and then we do the work plan. So at this point, you already will have filled out the NEFPAP Plus, which you're going to learn a lot more about in section 4. So the next one of the next parts of your online course. But you're going to do a needs assessment. And that needs assessment is going to give you a lot of information. So that's going to be figuring out what the pantry has capacity for, what they can do, what they want to do. And that information is really going to help you fill out this work plan. And then you're going to draft some sample activities. Now, I say sample because we want to share this information with the pantry and let them collaborate with us on what they do and don't want to do, right? Remember, you're just the guide through this program. They know the pantry best. Whether you are implementing with an outside agency and you're going to start drafting this work plan, do the needs assessment, then draft the work plan and pitch it to the pantry. Or if you are working within your own pantry, you're still going to fill out a needs assessment for your own pantry and then use that information again to fill out some draft or some sample work plan items. Then you want to share it with the people who are going to be doing this work, right? So if you're an outside organization, share it with the pantry. If you're in your own organization, share it with the team that's going to be helping you roll out this program and make sure people get excited about it and feel good about that. That's going to be one of the biggest hurdles getting started. So familiarize yourself with the needs assessment before you go to fill it out. Familiarize yourself with the work plan before you go to fill it out. Some other tips, more soft skills, are maximize on site visits. If you are working at your own pantry, you already know you have a lot of site visits. But if you are going to be visiting an outside pantry where you're implementing, when you are on site to do that NEFPAP plus, right, the more standardized assessment, then you're going to do the needs assessment as well. That's where you're talking directly with the pantry, getting their thoughts on it. Um, really take the time to familiarize yourself with that site, take photos, take measurements. That's going to help you get a much better idea of what is and is not possible as opposed to, someone else trying to describe it to you. A picture is worth 1,000 words, right? Get organized, whether you're an outside organization or you're implementing in your own organization. How are you going to keep all of these documents organized? And how are you going to share them with the people that need to know it, right? So are you going to do a Google Drive folder? Are you going to be printing things out? Some pantries are really old school and they want everything hard copy. So should items be in a binder in that case? Just check in with the pantry. What's going to work best with them to stay organized? What's going to work best for you as the implementer to stay organized, stay on time, stay on this roadmap. Share photos with the pantry to get excited. Basecamp is full of photos. Leah's going to show that here in just a moment or a little bit later down the line. But photos are a great way to get inspired, whether you are showing a pantry what they can do or you're just trying to get inspired for your own pantry. Those photos have a lot of great information and ideas. Gauge a level of overwhelm. This program can get intense, and especially if we're coming up onto the holidays right now. So this is actually probably not a great time to reach out to pantries, especially with the staff benefits being really uncertain. So if you were already working with a pantry and let's say it's next year and the holidays are coming, you might want to take a break, or SNAP benefits continue to be uncertain and pantries get overwhelmed. It's okay to pause or scale back a little bit, whatever it is that the pantry needs to do. Transparency is key, which is also really goes hand in hand with modifications as needed. As we said, bronze is a great option. Silver is an awesome option, and you can always come back and recertify again in the future. We've probably said this so many times, you're sick of hearing it, but be really clear about expectations. Whether it's with the outside pantry that you're going to be implementing with, or it's within your own organization. Be clear with what is going to be needed, how long this is going to take, the steps of this process so that the pantry can feel like they know where they're at in the process and they're not just being led, through the dark in this program. And celebrate the things that they're already doing. Pantries are often already doing a lot of really good work, and we don't want to overlook the work that they're already doing. It's a great opportunity to give them a pat on the back and say, look, you're already doing these great things. We can just make a couple of updates, and that counts towards our certification. And then be honest with the partner. So, whether this is an outside partner, right, and hey, I'm implementing for the first time, I'm a little green, but that means you're going to get lots of time and attention from me, or you're, honest with the people within your own organization. Hey, guys, we're going to give this a go. We're going to do our best to show up and implement some changes, but, we're in this together. And finally, I want to share some resources to use for the actual program implementation section. I'm going to show you all the planning call, the needs assessment. We went through the work plan, and then some feedback resources, and then also the leading practices document. So we're going to hop back over into the resource library. Before I was really showing you things up here in the overview, right? So this was our planning phase when we were getting pantries onboarded, getting our own pantry excited. Then we're kind of in the next phase, implementer overview. We have a timeline. We have our example work plans down here. And now we're at the point where we got a pantry on board. And so this time we are going to go into our planning call. So let's find our planning call. There it is. We have this in both English and Spanish. And in the planning call, this is when we're first talking to the pantry. They're like, yeah, we're interested. We've kind of recruited them, and we're going to get an idea of what their pantry looks like, what their setup is. It takes us through, food sources, nutrition ed, policies and procedures, etc. Then our next step is going to be the needs assessment. There it is. And the needs assessment is far more in depth. It's like the planning call is kind of dipping our toes in, and now we're going to jump right in. And the needs assessment is 10 pages. We're going to get tons of information about all the different focus areas. And this is a call that you're going to want to do with the pantry, ideally in person, and level set that this could take some time. Like if we have, I've done it and it's taken up to like 2 hours. So maybe you need to do two separate meetings, or whatever it is, however you want to set it up. Ensure there's ample time to get lots of information from the pantry and for them to ask questions. Because just in these conversations, information that you might not be directly asking about will come up that can be really helpful. I showed you all the work plan already. And one other item that I really want to show about when you're creating this work plan is the leading practices document. If you're trying to get ideas, you have that the needs assessment. Let's say it's broken down by like, okay, the pantry says in the needs assessment that they want to do more direct education. Here's some ideas of what you can suggest on the work plan, and over here we have all the resources highlighted. So this is one that often gets overlooked, but whenever implementers use it, they come back to us and they're like, oh my gosh, that was so helpful. It was kind of like a mix and match roadmap to help me create my work plan, but it often gets overlooked. So remember this one, especially for your first work plan. Now, finally, on that needs assessment, the answers to some of these questions might be, do neighbors want this or do neighbors want that? And the answer to those questions might be, I don't know. We need to ask our neighbors. And so we have lots of great resources about how to collect neighbor feedback. And to take us into that in depth, I'm going to pass it on over to Leah.
Okay, so we just went through a lot of the process, really getting started, getting folks excited. Um, Now we're going to dive into our first kind of unofficial NPP focus area. So in the online course, you're going to be presented, or maybe you've already watched them, you're going to learn all about our 6 official focus areas. Things like nutrition education, environmental changes, policies and procedures, community connections. But feedback actually influences all those focus areas. So we kind of call it our unofficial seventh focus area. And it's honestly the best place to start. So when thinking about, okay, how do I start to gather feedback? Or maybe this is something that you're already doing, but you just want to assess, what are we doing? How successful has it been? I like to ask myself three questions when I'm getting started. The first is, what is it that I really want to know? Right? Is it, am I really curious about, how convenient the hours and the layout is of the space? Am I curious about if people are accessing other resources within the community and I can act as a better referral partner, offering more warm referrals between different agencies? Am I curious about people's food preferences and dietary needs? There's so many questions you can ask. You could ask all of them, but it's not always appropriate to, right? I'm sure many of us have implemented community surveys or other feedback methods. It's difficult to know exactly what to ask, and you don't want to overwhelm folks, right? Which is why you really have to think about, how are you going to gather this information? So you have to think about, what's the capacity at this site, right? What's my capacity as well? What is reasonable? Maybe I would love to learn all these questions and do an in-depth focus group and implement a survey to others, but maybe that's just not feasible right now, right? Again, we're talking about, this is a time where we're entering the holidays, where we know folks are going to be hosting more distributions, have more people showing up at all of them. So an in-depth feedback method might not be the perfect place to start. Um, so it's all about finding balance, right? Balance between what it is that you want to know and how you want to ask those questions and gather that data. And then finally, and I think this part is really important because it's not always incorporated into a feedback method, but you need to close that loop, right? So what are you going to do with that information after it's been gathered? Okay, we asked folks what they have to say. How will we let them know? We heard you. We might not be able to make an immediate change, but we did hear you and we are taking into consideration everything that was shared with us. So we're going to dive into each of these three steps in more detail now. What you see on the screen right here, all throughout today's presentation, we've been showing you little snippets of things that you can find in the resource library, right? So here is a really good starting point if you're really starting to think about, I want to explore different feedback methods. There's a one pager that kind of does an overview of all the things we're going to be talking about today. So it's like your review for, your cliff notes for feedback whenever you want to think about, okay, should I do the survey or the comment card? What's that jar survey again? So we have it all listed right here. So starting with number one, which is, how are we going to get feedback? Let's consider some of the most common and successful methods used in pantry spaces. So we know surveys, right? We've all taken surveys. Most of us have probably handed out surveys. Surveys are great. They can be done electronically. They can be done in person with a hard copy. We have an incredible neighbor survey template that is available in 7 different languages. So even if you don't utilize this entire survey, the point is that you have a key where you can ask so many questions in so many different languages. And so you can kind of pick and choose, right? All of our resources, for the most part, are editable. So you can take that, you can say, like, let me make a copy of this. I only want to ask these 3 top questions, or one question once a distribution, right? But you have all the languages already translated for you. So that makes it really easy. But the populations that we're serving are oftentimes over surveyed, right? They're constantly being asked to prove something, to show documentation, to answer questions. So it's really important to take into consideration, maybe I don't want to administer a lengthy survey for an over-surveyed population. Maybe I would rather do a quick social media poll. It's still asking survey questions, but it's doing it in a way that feels very voluntary, a little bit more interactive, maybe a little bit more fun. Comment boxes are still used. We have all experienced the dusty comment box in the corner where you're like peeking in and you're like, month 5, still nothing returned here. But they actually can be used really successfully. So I don't want people to absolutely write off comment boxes. They're fun. They're, kind of an anonymous way to ask for feedback. You can see at this site, the words might be a little bit small. So they're actually kind of prompting folks, do you have any suggestions or comments you want to make around the food, the supplies, the hours of operation, the customer service, any general feedback, um, questions, things like that. So having a comment box visible, colorful, easy to access, well labeled, have pins available, have the paper right there, right? Make it really easy for someone to utilize a comment box and it will actually be used. Um, Probably my favorite method to implement because it's so easy, it's so tactile, and it's fun is using something like a sticker voting or the jar voting method. So this is where at either a drive-through, a pop-up, or an in-person distribution, you are asking folks a question. It can be kind of like a this or a that, or it could actually be, what other, this is one I did at a site I implemented at it. It was a dot sticker voting dot about, what other resources would you like more information about? And so people could put some stickers under like, actually, I want more information about transportation or housing or child resource programs, school lunch programs, right? So you can ask whatever question you want, but it's asking folks to vote based on just kind of like mass quantity, right? So like puffballs dropped into a fishbowl or marbles dropped into a fishbowl or using stickers on a sticker board. So it's a really low pressure, fun way to collect feedback. You can ask, what did you enjoy most today? Do you prefer this or that? Do you need other resources, other language needs? I've seen some really creative ways of utilizing the sticker voting and the jar voting method as well. Conversations, you can't write off the fact that you are in conversation constantly with neighbors, right? Either you as the implementer or if you're actually working a food distribution. So we're going to talk on the next slide about how you utilize just all that information you have from your regular conversations with folks. And then finally, actually hosting a focus group can be a great way to learn needs, desires, likes, dislikes to get to the bottom of issues at the site. This method provides a ton of information. It requires a little bit more work, right? But if you haven't hosted a focus group before, we actually have a one-pager where we kind of give you sample questions, how to set it up, how to do it properly. It is really fun. I would say that, a best practice is paying people through gift cards, food, money, however you can, right, for time participating, because it is time that people are spending doing work essentially. But focus groups can really give you the most interesting information about your site. Really, it can. I've done a couple focus groups for sites that were just getting started as well. So before they even opened the pantry, they were like, let's take our community and host a focus group so we can really learn more about what they'd like to see at this site. And they used all that information to inform, how they set it up, what the look, the feel, the name. So focus groups can be really, really convenient and interesting. So no one method is better than another, but all of these methods of getting feedback really inform, along with the needs assessment, what type of activities you do on site, right? Because you only want to make changes that are desired by the pantry or the community, and both, best case scenario, right? So let's talk about empathy mapping, because empathy mapping is a really interesting tool for understanding neighbor feedback. It can really kind of tap you into that reframing curiosity mindset and get a better idea of holistically and overall, what are people thinking and feeling. So an empathy map is a tool for understanding needs through debriefing on things that you're directly observing. So you're not necessarily answering a direct question like you are with a focus group or a survey, but it's looking again kind of holistically at a general experience that people are having. So to complete an empathy map, now everyone kind of like, if you've been distracted, maybe refocus right now because a little preview, we are going to have you work on this in a couple minutes as a group. Okay, so feelers up that, okay, focus on what the empathy map is. So to work on an empathy map, you have a group of folks come together, staff, volunteers, a group in a training session, right? Whatever it is, you don't generally do an empathy map alone. It's done as a group. And what you do is you spend a little bit of time on the top half of the map. You kind of individually start to, usually if you're doing it in person, maybe you're using post-it notes and you're thinking about what are all the things that I'm hearing my community just generally say? Am I hearing, when you just think back on your time at a distribution, am I hearing a lot of the same questions, comments? Am I hearing um, people voice concerns or complaints? Am I hearing people, say appreciative things? You just start to actually write down what are things that people are saying when they're at your site. You also write down what are things that people are doing, right? Are they chatting with each other? Are they waiting in a long line? Do they appear agitated? So it can be positive and negative. It doesn't have to be one thing. You really come into an empathy map with just saying, let me just reflect for a while. I don't have to get this 100% right. Let me just write some things down and then start to look at it in groupings. So, for example, you might say, neighbor's been pacing, a neighbor took more items than allowed. I see neighbors talking and engaging with each other. I see people expressing gratitude for the services. So anything, it can be an individual behavior, it can be kind of group behavior. So you do the top half somewhat individually, and then that's when you come together as a group. And you really look at all the different things that were posted about what folks in the community are saying, what people are doing at a site. And then you just debrief. What do we think they're thinking about in that situation? What might they be feeling? Is it, oh, okay, I'm actually thinking like, I think someone's pacing in line and they might be thinking like, I'm uncomfortable going through this intake process. And then maybe I see someone actually saying, why do I have to fill out this intake process? What are you going to use this information for? Then you can really say, I really think that someone feels nervous and anxious about how we're going to use their information and that they're nervous about this intake process, right? So the bottom quadrant, you debrief upon as a group, kind of making some assumptions about what people are thinking and feeling. The say and the do is what you write down individually. When you do that, you can really look holistically at communities, right? So you can sort of, again, approach this with that reframing mindset. Oh, okay, interesting. I'm being curious about the behaviors and the actions and the words that I'm hearing at my site. Can they tell me something about my community's needs or desires or feelings in this moment? So here's another example. So again, these are negative, but they can also be positive, right? So I want to emphasize that. Neighbors, maybe says there isn't enough time given to them to shop at a site. Um, Maybe a different neighbor. I see people trying to cut in line or take longer than allowed. Perhaps if I'm holistically looking at some actions and words here, this is just with one sticky, but still I might think, well, maybe these people are thinking or neighbors are thinking, I don't know that my family's going to want to eat these items that they're getting. I don't know if they'll like them. Maybe they're feeling anxious and worried. So that's all you do. Here's what it looks like in person because it's really fun to do these in person. And if you do have a big team, I really recommend maybe this is kind of your practice that we do now to get your feet wet, and then do this with your team, during or after a distribution or at some sort of group meeting. Do it with your volunteers. So you can see here, we did some empathy mapping in person. We actually did it with different groups of folks. So we did empathy maps about staff, about volunteers, and then about the participants. So it doesn't just have to be your participants. Here's a site I worked with where they were like, okay, what are people saying at the site? Why don't we just take notes as we're kind of going through the distribution? So they started that way by just noting, okay, these are what I'm noticing, noting their actions and words throughout a distribution. So that's a good place to start as well. Okay, so we're going to practice an empathy map. Now, you don't all work in the same community and with the same folks, and that's okay. So all the different things written on the slide, they might not tell you a big picture about one community, but you can still kind of debrief on your own observations. If you're not directly in a pantry space, you can think about, nutrition education you've done, or just anytime you've worked in community or alongside community, basically. Let me spend just the last couple minutes showing you what you're all going to get access to today. So when you see an email come in inviting you to join Basecamp, it is not spam, it is us. We want you on here. Basecamp is a project management tool that Leah's Pantry pays for so that our implementers can have one place where they can access all of our NPP resources. So everything we showed you today, when you log in, you will see on Basecamp. So mine looks different than yours because you won't have any projects. When you start to work with sites and turn in assessments, we will create a project for you. Okay, so you won't see any of this down there, but that's a great tool. Think about it. When you start to work with a site, we're actually going to give you a page like this where you can have all your worksheets, where you can have, we will give you this list of to-dos, you can make messages between folks on here. So use it as you want. It's a really good project management tool that, like I said, it's a tool that costs money that companies pay for, and we're offering it to you for free. So use it if you want to. Definitely use it at least for finding all of our resources. So you're going to log in. You'll see there's an NPP for Implementers resources card. On here, we have just a couple of main things. One is a resource page. There's a welcome to Basecamp video. I don't know how many times Colby's made this video because they keep changing Basecamp on us, and then she has to redo the video again. So it's a good place to start. Highlighted in pink to make sure it's very visible and easy for you to find is your big, vast NPP for Implementers resource library. So that's where you find it. Let's go back here, back to the page. We have some specific photo examples. So if you love to learn by seeing examples of this program out in the community, all of our different focus areas plus some have pictures from implementers who've graduated sites. So I love that page. Your initial assessment tool, which you'll learn more about in the course soon, NPP quarterly calls, recommended resources, and some specifics for you as well. And then the other big use of Basecamp is this is how we really communicate with our network. So when we're sharing, hey, we created a new resource. Hey, is there a need for translations? Watch out, we have an upcoming quarterly call. Here's the link. All that is going to come through Basecamp. But you as a Basecamp implementer, you can always change all of your settings. So if you're like, I want to learn whenever any new update comes in, I don't mind a ping coming through my email. You can make your settings so you can also change your notification settings here. I only want to hear about a message, or I only want to, I don't want to see anything. I just want to log in to Basecamp when I want to access something. So you have that ability to change what you see and how you get notified. So like we said, you're going to get access to Basecamp by the end of this week. Amy will send that all out. And otherwise, I am happy to say, oh shoot, I had a couple more slides here. So maybe we aren't just on time. I was really confident. I was like, we're ending right on time. Really quickly, the then what, how do you let neighbors know when you did that client feedback piece that you heard them? Sharing results. We've seen some really cool things like word clouds being posted, sharing in an annual report, sharing in an email, making those changes. The great thing about AI, it's an intimidating tool, but for doing data analysis, for putting together reports, it is the most helpful thing in the world. So really lean into the free tools that are out there. If you want to kind of put together your survey results, dice them and slice them and dice them and look at them in different ways. And now we're at our closing. So our very last training session for this program will be in 2 weeks, right before kind of the holidays, the Thanksgiving holidays on the 18th. We do want you to complete sections 3 and 4 of the online self-paced work. That's the end of it. And you will get that request to join us on Basecamp this week. Reach out to us with any questions.